City Council meeting. Welcome to all who are here. And we will begin, well, we're all present excepting Councilmember Bowers. We will begin, and I forgot to look and see where we are on location. Okay. Prayer or a thought by Councilmember Perkins, followed by the pledge. We don't have our regular flag here, but we'll broadcast them on the screen for that purpose.
Gracious Heavenly Father in heaven, we are grateful to be gathered together this evening to make decisions that are in the best interest of them and city. We're grateful for this location that we choose to live and for the many benefits that it provides. We're grateful for the opportunity to serve. And we do ask thy special blessing over us that our minds will be clear and that we can truly do what thou had us do. We ask you to bless those members of our community that are struggling, that are mourning, that we can know how we can lift them up. We thank you and love you in Jesus' name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving right along. Council had occasion to review the agenda and the minutes. Are there any comments or corrections? Amending my previous remarks, we now do have full.
Motion to approve the consent agenda minutes from August or not. Yeah, August 24th, 2021.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let's, Monson, Milton, all in favor?
Aye.
Sound like everybody, any opposed? Okay, are there anything on the agenda that has a particular conflict of interest, anyone? None? Move right ahead. We have open forum. Anybody who'd like to address council on an issue, as far as the historical commission, will have that during my agenda item that relates to the letter associated with the presentation. So is there anyone else in attendance that would like to address the council on any issue? Glad to listen to you. Okay, seeing none. Reports, I don't have any particular reports except that I did walk into Kim's office as she was getting off the phone with the contractor that's working with UDOT on getting Highway 95 open. So my report will be whatever you learned. We're like 60 days out, right?
What was that? They just said that they were 20 days from, it would be 20 days while they were mobilizing, and they're looking at 40 days to get it done, and then it could extend beyond there. But a start date, they didn't have one.
So my level of frustration continues to climb, and I know that UDOT will not just push a temporary road around there because they will be sued for not having done an archaeology study in the bottom of the wash where the MSRB never built anything because they weren't as many as we are. There is no archaeology there, but that's the reality that they're dealing with. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we could have had a road pushed around the next day. So it's an economic impact to have no traffic east to west across the southeast state.
I've had about my 5 to 8 cancellation,
Yeah.
5 to 8 cancellation this week due to the high multiple day stays. And it's
I've tried to push on it from different angles, and I think I have a blocking
I
time.
can tell you, I've talked to everyone from the governor's office to heads and about it.
Lieutenant Governor's office, and we've talked to UDOT about it as well. And it is what it is as far as the situation is concerned. UDOT also cannot redirect traffic to other roads that are not UDOT roads. Unless that was promoted by the entities that own those roads as well. So that's another one of the roadblocks. So, and just getting materials is part of why it's so time, it's taking so long, it's difficult to get materials.
Well, I mean, the impact would be worse, except that Lake Powell's essentially shut down, especially on our side. So with that, we were already happy, but not having the road is. Anyway, any reports from council? Any you're not there specifically, that's fine. Is there any other than what Cheryl's gonna? What do you got for us?
So I just wanted to know that I attended the Utah Districting Commission Council, I believe is what it's called, meeting that they had in Monticello, and there actually wasn't that many people in attendance. It was on Labor Day weekend, which was unfortunate. We were also their very first stop, and I don't think they did a lot of advertising or marketing. I think that will get better as they move along. They are going to Moab in a few weeks. I'll try and get that date for everyone in case anyone wants to go. But it's really, really critical. It will determine our next state legislator and our next state senator, and on our next school board, our next state school board representative as well. But if the question that they had for people that were there, do Fleming and Monticello both, because that's who was really was there. Do we want to go west or do we want to go north? Do we want to be districted with people who are west of us, or do we want to be districted with people who are north of us? So I think we need to do some research. I've been speaking with Phil Lyman as well, because I take very seriously what he says in this matter. And then our thought was, I was there with the Monticello City Councilwoman, and we thought we could do a joint resolution with deciding that measure. Do we want to go north with Moab, Price, Carbon? Do we want to go west and stay kind of the way we are right now, which is Kane and Garfield, those smaller areas? But because of the growth in some of the larger cities, we will have to have some urban areas probably in our district, because we're shrinking and the urban areas are increasing, which is happening in most of the rural counties in Utah. We told them we want to stay rural. We'd like to have all the rural counties stay together. We like the way our district is now, but unfortunately with the population change with the census, they can't just keep it the way it is. So anyway, just so you guys, if you want, they have a website, Utah Redistricting Commission, and you can go on there, you can play around with it. You can see, you can make maps, and it'll show you the population and the numbers. And it tells you how many, you have to have like 112,000 or something like that for a state legislative seat. So that I just wanted to report to everybody. If you can take some time to look at that, it is really, really important, because we could end up with a legislator from Washington County, or with a legislator even from the first map they had drawn for us for the legislative seat went clear up into Logan, to the whole north half of the state, including us. So we could have a legislator that lives in Logan at this point. So we need to,
A state senator or a state?
state rep. So we would have a state rep that was the only one map. They'd only drawn one map, and it's all in the very beginning stages. But they really did seem to care. It was a great group of people, completely supposed to be unbiased. A few of them really did care about rural areas. A few of them, I think, most of them were from urban areas, but a few of them really did care about rural areas. And I think that they will take our input very seriously as a city council. So I think maybe putting some thoughts together on what we would like to see, and then doing a joint resolution with Monticello could hold some serious weight, but we do need to get Phil Lyman's input as well. So.
Any questions for? I'm gonna take a look at that now.
So what's the timetable?
They have to, it's actually better. They have to have the decision it has to go through the legislature once they make their recommendation. So the legislature can override anything that they say, but has to go to the legislature, the state legislature, and then it has to be done by January first, in writing and done, because they have to start getting signatures. So it's gonna be fast. We don't have a ton of time and they don't have a lot of time. They all seem a little.
I think it was COVID, the census results were released all
So,
later.
yeah. So slow everything down. So I think they plan to get their decision out by November 8th. Their final recommendation from that by November 8th. That's why they're really asking for input from, especially from the rural areas. November 8th, and then the legislature will have to decide on it by the 14th of November. So it's not, we don't have a lot of time.
I had a couple meetings that I forgot to mention, but I had a meeting yesterday with the Department of Human Services in the state of Utah. And we talked about suicide prevention, mental health awareness, and some ideas that we're gonna try and come up with for rural places for places like that. And that was a good meeting. And then a couple weeks ago, Senator Lee was down here. Had lunch and met with him. And not anything specific. We talked about the redistricting stuff, census, that stuff, roads, public farms. Yeah. Those are a few meetings that I've had in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, and plus Lieutenant Governor came.
Yeah,
to
we've had
plan
one
and
with them again, and
that was very positive.
there's a open house this week on Thursday, Friday. Go.
At the Bluff Resort.
Yes. I can send you the schedule if you haven't already received that of what's going on. And Mayor, just after we or something, I need to follow up with you on.
Okay, you said that the open house for that is starting up with what, resort and what? I would have assumed it was just a meet all, so. But I don't know. I thought it was-
I can follow up.
I think that the email that I got had the resort as a place to stay.
Yeah,
That's what I understood.
I'm sure.
But last I saw the schedule, they're planning on starting to do tours at 10 o'clock, so I think that they'll do them at the mill. But I can forward that schedule. I can meet
Oh, yeah.
on.
Essentially, it's 9, there's some speakers on Thursday, and then tours, and then a meal after, and then Friday's the same, minus the speakers at 9.
Logan shot, I think anytime you can come whenever you wanted to.
Yeah. Unless you
yeah,
plan on.
they're
going
trying to
next week.
RSVP to balance and all, but you can show up. They're not gonna chase you away if you're not on the list.
One question I have is for our next meeting on the 28th, are we loading enough? Yeah, no, that's a US.
So, yes, I was gonna bring that up in my reports that I'll be gone for, UAMP and the League of Susan Towns that week. And so Logan, and I didn't know, were you planning on?
I know, I think.
Yeah, so I'm gonna stop corn here, and I was just gonna zoom in that evening,
So I could too. Okay.
Can I just add a note too? It's important to note that our county is also redistricting at the same time, which is equally as important, if not more important for us. And so it might be just as, we want to do the same thing as a council come to a decision on possibly what we would like to see in our redistricting for our county and write a resolution. So at least it's in writing on paper and our stance is strong that we don't want to be split 3 ways as they redistrict the county. Again, from what I understand, they are in the process of working on a new map for redistricting.
And it's not the same group that's doing that?
So it will be the commissioners that make the final decision. We don't have a special committee. Utah voted to do a special committee. It was on the last ballot. So Utah, as a state, voted to do a special committee to redistrict rather than just let legislators make the decision. In our county, it's still the commissioners who will make the final decision, but I know the new state or the county clerk is working on the process of giving them some options.
And do they hire someone for that as well?
Yes.
Legal counsel or something?
Yeah, but it's not an independent commission.
Right.
Yeah, which I don't think is a bad idea.
That's all I got.
If we can find out where public can get to county process as well.
Yeah, I called and talked to about this redistricting we went to, and they told me they had no input or influence about the county.
Yes, so this Utah Redistricting Commission has nothing to do with the county.
Okay, so that's how they explain it, so maybe I can talk after, it. Maybe
Yeah.
we need to talk to, yeah. Right.
Okay, anything else from council? Okay, Dave, what do you got for us?
Well, a couple things have already been covered, but two things. One, the state has local matching grant funds that they've been accepting up until tomorrow, actually. And so we've applied both for our deep well here, as well as for the east side sewer project, a portion of the east side sewer project, which would be, and this portion is up in our CRA area, because we felt that given all the portions and the costs associated with this would give us the most bang for the buck and not ask too much, if that makes sense. So, so I just literally hit submit on those today.
Well, and just to expand on that, on the thought for the deep well, there's a parallel thing happening, because we believe that the state is gonna come through with the whole West Bar thing, which will include the funding for the deep well. But if perchance that didn't all fall into place, we want to keep pursuing what we were doing in the first place.
Right, and prior to the
We need
ARPA
to make
funding,
sure that our grant application is clearly subordinate to that one, and then if that one doesn't come through, we don't want to see the liability that we expressed or implied for the whole project,
right,
because of our.
and that's what was communicated in the grant, is that this would be standalone if the other state funding doesn't come through. And just to be clear for the public's sake, is the city council gave staff direction a while ago, before discussions about connecting with Westwater or working with the state. This council gave staff direction to pursue a deep well. Because when I first got here, you were looking at potential other reservoirs, found that wasn't cost effective or timely. And so we were given the direction to pursue a deep well. And so we were already pursuing a USDA grant until some of these other things came into play. And now that's kind of our plan C. So if these two things don't work out, then we'll go ahead and pursue the USDA grant, because we need that extra source of water as it is. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to bring up is we checked with the vendor that does the shade structure for the baseball park. And not only is it significantly less to buy it and install it ourselves, we still got to look at the cost of doing the concrete work and everything ourselves. But it also, what I wanted to verify is that it wouldn't void any warranties. And they assured us and emailed us that it does not. So we'll probably move forward based on the direction. It's in budget, it's well under budget, which means we'll have excess budget for recreation type fees. So, yeah, if you, I know Councilmember Nielsen wanted to maybe talk about that.
Do you have any idea how much it went to? I know it's a billion, save some money there.
Yeah, and the pavilion, we're confident in the shade structure. We haven't dove as deep into the pavilion even on our own. I do want to double check that with staff. But yeah, those funds would then be available for recreation. The only the only caveat that I would throw in there is we still have the situation with the sprinklers and the lack of sprinklers and showers at the recreation center, the wellness center. And so I would put that in the back of your minds as you discuss the potential use of those funds that we have. But I think for sure that there's one option.
But you don't know how much it costs to install.
Oh, well, I think I put the numbers in here. Yeah, it's like $80,000, yeah. So plus, the pavilion, I don't think I put the numbers in there, I think that, because we were focusing more on the shade structure to start with. But yeah, at least with just the shade structure, it's about $80,000 savings, which, I don't know, if you take $10,000, I doubt quite $10,000, an additional 10 for concrete or whatever else needs to be done. Probably $70,000, so, which could go.
But it's not saving because we weren't willing to spend that high amount either.
You're right, but we budgeted for it.
Okay,
So it technically is savings because we budgeted.
kind of.
Per
That's
the
just outrageous.
saving money that we were never going to spend. That's kind of what that means.
Yeah, so
If the price is this high, we're not doing it.
Kim is making
Not
mention that
high.
if we do something with that leftover budget, we'll have to make an adjustment. So right now, Kim and I, there's a few things that you guys are all already aware of. I can't list them all off the top of my head, but there's a few minor budget adjustments. And so when we do the mid-year adjustment and the end of the year adjustment, we would just bring that to you. That, I appreciate your enthusiasm. Other than that, I'm okay.
Okay,
So, no, we might have to add it. We might have to add it to the agenda. Or is it an agenda?
Well, it's not a general, but it's on the
thing
list.
Well, we might have to take action on it as a council and maybe a little.
I mean, when we know.
Let me check with staff on the time frame they would take to do it, make sure, I don't know if we're gonna have to contract to do the concrete work or if we can do it in-house. And then the next step will be them looking at the pavilion and see what the savings is there. And then I would bring it to the council as a discussion item in general of what would you like to do with this fund? Not spend it on dirt, spend it on fire suppression in showers, or spend it on something else that would be up to you. But I'd bring it as a broad discussion item.
Well, it might require a vote though. So.
Yeah, right, but
Bring it as an action item.
But what I would want is first a discussion item to get consensus from the council of the direction they want to go, and then we could take the formal steps to then bring it to you for a vote. But I hate to bring it as an action item when we don't really have a sense of what the consensus is on. So,
But we don't want to keep, I guess it's almost winter time at this point now. But we don't want to keep delaying it either. It's true. Still using the field. You know, the dirt's hard to drop.
that's just use slow.
Lots
of
Just keep down for it.
Okay. Staff reports. Accounts payable, all money.
Have any questions on the wish list?
I didn't see anything that jumped out.
Is the ULARP's total, is that's not buying, out, right?
Okay, water.
Jerry's not good to see.
Just make a note that the city share of 2020 and the city share of 2019 columns. The 2020 column is the total of the 2019 year. The 2020 column doesn't total up to any number on that page. There's a formula messed up in that spreadsheet, so 1315 is the total of 2019, and the total of 2020 is actually 3118, not 3070, so they're not just switched either. There's no.
Well, Terry's experiment, see if paying attention works. So,
Well, I think,
Something was really weird there.
okay, we'll talk to him when he gets back.
We're up to the fourth reservoir. Kids fishing, you know, where the pipeline feeds it. There's a little water coming through there.
There's
It was a pretty good little flow of water, and I guess it's from the rain,
yeah, takes a little while.
but I was impressed with the flow. I didn't expect to see that, so.
On the water conservation is in trouble. 31% less than August of last year.
Yeah, I mean,
Part
on
of
that,
that's because of rain.
but I think we'd be remiss to not give credit to the school district, the city, the church, and others in the community that have very noticeably pulled back on their water. So you will see a lot of brown lawns out there. And while it's not as pretty, it's reassuring that we're doing our part.
Agreed.
Police, chief, did you get a detailed report? Is, you know, if you want to highlight off of the, we don't have it.
I've got a full detailed one on my phone here. For last year, or, yeah, August of this year, we had 22 more calls for service. We had 44 arrests with 6 warrants versus 21 arrests last August. 108 citations, 132 violations this year versus 65 and 83 violations last year. So traffic issues, a lot of it is speed related. Like you see on the news, high speed everywhere.
Seen a lot of flashing lights lately.
Yeah, and we can't stop enough cars to slow them down.
Good.
Unfortunately, 50 is kind of a common speed down the street right now.
Yeah, there's this thing past me that they go probably 50 or more. I'm glad to see there was a drop up there.
Yeah, I was hoping, yeah, it was.
Well, and I appreciate that you work with the county and the highway patrol too,
Yeah,
because I see county trucks pulling people over when you guys can't, and that's.
yeah, and if you was to add their stats into our stats, it would not double, but it would.
So we feel that the community's gotten used to the flashing signs out here by Slavens is.
I do. I've seen the kids pushing the buttons. I came through a couple times this morning while kids were coming to school. Lights are flashing and the traffic is really slowing down. So
So they got the hang of it.
I think so, yeah. Kids understand it.
Any more comments from public on it, or just a
No.
couple that?
I think just the first couple of days where the kids didn't understand how to push the button, like, don't know if the public had that show up and they were started. Yeah,
Right.
but it,
Which isn't a bad idea either.
yeah. it just like predators.
Motion sensor can always be going up.
But you guys are staying busy. On a positive note, our domestic violence arrests for August were down about half over the month before as well. So people are getting out and doing stuff. That energy and all that stuff. We are seeing some improvement there. I hope it continues. All will go away, but we're trying.
Any other questions for chief on
Thanks, Chief.
that? Okay,
Thank you.
So discussion items. The historical commission and et al. Anyway, the Diamonds have had this dream of a museum, and it's morphed into different things over so many years, and they're very tenacious. And I just really respect that, because I always look back and say, I don't have the energy to do that. And I think they're at least 10 years older than me, and they're still pursuing this with vengeance. And it's really something when people have a dream and they stick on it and find a way to try to make that happen. So you'll see in the packet a letter that I have written, generally supporting this idea, but carefully not committing city resources, because I can't do that. You all can do that if that were to happen, but I can't. And so I think I'll turn the time over to Tony. Are you taking the lead on this? Yeah, take a few minutes. You have a little bit of a presentation, and maybe there's a question or two, and then I'll be asking if the council would like to endorse the letters that I have written. It does mention the council in there. If y'all don't like the letter, then I'll take council out and I'll just send them a stuff.
Mayor, we're appreciative of the opportunity to present to you this evening. Council, we're appreciative of your considering what we will present. I'm making the presentation, I'm taking the lead from my position as chair of the San Juan County Historic Preservation Commission. prepared written comments, so I'll just read those with your indulgence. In response to requests to assist in telling the multifaceted story of the Blanding community, and sensitive to the fact quality efforts are in place or are in progress elsewhere in San Juan County. For example, the Monticello Museum, the Bluff Fort, and the Old Jacob Trading Post. The San Juan County Historical Preservation Commission and the Charles Redd Center for Western Studies support the nonprofit vision of Gary and Sharon Diamond of a Southeastern Utah Museum of the American West to be built in Blanding. Gary and Sharon have acquired and are prepared to donate the Peter Minnerly Shumway Homestead, which is adjacent to the Blanding Visitor Center and the Albert R. Lyman's Swallow's Nest as the museum site. The museum already has 501c3 status, and architectural renderings have been produced. The renderings are for a 6,800 square foot building on 2 levels. The Diamond Vision would celebrate the cultural, ethnic, and economic diversity of our corner of the state. To guide this vision, a diverse museum board of directors will be assembled. The Historical Preservation Commission has agreed to facilitate raising the estimated $1.5 million needed to build the museum. A maintenance and operations budget will also be needed to get things started. We are requesting interested parties to make tax-deductible donations to the commission to make this vision a reality. We are asking the Blanding City Mayor and Council to endorse this effort. So if there are any questions, I'll try to answer those.
Is there a particular historical context for the old house down there? Other than just it's been there a long time, is there a specific, or
You want me to speak to that? Sure. Well, the Peter Shumway and Mary lived in a recaptured canyon, a place we call Fiddler's Green. It's as you go down out the White Mesa Hill, go left to recapture on the east side of the creek. There's a road that goes north a couple miles where you come to the old Peter Shumway homestead. There is a building that was part of their milk shed or where they kept the cream that's right by recaptured wash. The wash for the new 5 feet that was over into. But that has been stabilized, and there are side stewards, one of which is my brother Lawrence, that kind of watches after that, make sure it's kept well. That's an interesting spot. Mary, at the time of the Ute problem in the 20s, told her husband she would no longer stay there all alone. With the watermelons were disappearing and et cetera. And so her husband built the north part of the house at Lee Shumway. Kate Shumway was raised there. It's a house over just south of the visitor center on the second east. And there's a little garage there and a sizable shop in back that Jim Davis had. When that property came up for sale, she and I thought it would be a good spot for the indoor part of the Museum of the West or Southeast Utah. And so we went ahead to purchase it over a period of time. And so that my wife would tell you she uses a patch sometimes as we donate that property as it's in the proper type of board. Helen we hope would represent the city now, and then eventually have someone else when Helen's not there. And we love what you folks do for the city, but we don't want this usually have changed them for 8 years, whatever, so you can understand that. And so we believe that there will be a proper board that will represent not just us folks, there'll be hopefully some Navajo folks will step up, and et cetera. Someone from Monticello, somebody from LaSalle, whatever. It's not just sharing my idea. It needs to be a community effort. We'll highlight the early history of Blanding. This was a dry mesa. The challenge was when the first folks got vision of town here, how do we get water here? And that's still an ongoing problem. And so certainly we'll have a feature that will highlight this is tunnel through the mountain, by superhuman effort. But there's many others. So I don't want to get into individuals or distinct things. But as far as the house, we're going to study and see what the part that Peter Shelley built, what's it on, I think it's on some rock footers. The other part's on a Kimberco landing basement where the moms and everybody was raising food and getting it stored in the basement. So it tells a story. The only problem is it's just the wrong place. Too bad we can't just magically move it. But we'll study that. And so that, in answer to your question, that's in process. The study.
Right, that's good. For next year, I've been really impressed with these guys. They work hard, garnering a lot of support from different groups in the community, in the state, and working hard to get funding and stuff too. I'm amazed at how quickly they put this in.
It's only been taking 20 years.
Yeah, well, I've only been a few months since I've been involved, so. But it's I've been impressed, and I think it's a good project. So.
Are there any issues with that kind of zoning over there for something like that?
The city's looked at a lot of things that would be associated with this. There's drainage through there, there's power line over that. And that is one discussion I had, is whether it's possible to use the land under the power line as a shared parking with that. We don't know yet. So there's just a lot of ideas have been thrown out there. And as this thing kind of fleshes out, then there'll be some decisions that we need to make as far as if and how, what support we want to render. If there were any financial commitment, then certainly I can't. That's what I said in the letter. I decided I think it's a great idea. Anything beyond saying it's a great idea involves more than just me writing a letter. So, but if you like the letter the way it stands, I can leave it the way it is and let them run with it. If you're like, yeah, we're not so sure, then I'll just send it. That's me.
I think you might want, if they're gonna use this, you're gonna use this letter for grant writing purposes, right?
Yes.
I think it'd be good to have all the council sign it if they're all willing. I think that would be very strong in a grant. And then I think this is great, Mayor. I think you might want to add something about that. This is a necessity for our area. We don't have, we're using an 8x10 room, 8x8 room right now to store the history of our city. So we might just want to add something in there about the need that we have for this museum. That will be helpful in their grant writing process as well.
I had a ghost writer that got this baseline started.
It looks great.
He'll remain nameless, but he is wearing glasses and sitting in the front row.
Well, you did good. I just would say, most grants, depending on the type of grant, you want to see that there's a need in the area as well as support, of course, from the area. But I think this is wonderful. I think we need to preserve our history, and I think it's critical. And I love that residents and members of our community are willing to take it on so that we as a city don't have to try and fund the whole thing. I just think it's fantastic. I support it 100%, and I'm willing to sign any letter for a grant that you need. I also know that our grant writer is looking for grants as well, and I know he's found a few that are for current operating museums that may be good for continued operational costs, and so we'll share those with you, Lisa Carr as well.
And Lisa's worked with you guys, right?
Yes.
So.
Thank you.
I would like to
say that Gary developed his interest in county history because he lived a couple doors down from Albert R. Lyman. And he used to go over there as a kid and sit around and Albert would tell him these stories. And when he got older, he recorded on reel-to-reel tape interviews with Albert R. Lyman and also cassettes. We took them up to the U of U and they recorded them and gave them to us back on CDs and they kept the originals. So we have Albert R. Lyman talking about the history of the county.
Well, thank you, all of you, and especially to the guidance, just your passion to get this done. I think it's tremendous, and thanks to the historical commission as well. It's really necessary. I consider it a necessity. I really do.
I think in a time where so much history has been erased in our country, I think it's important that we take a stand and we tell our story. And so I support you guys in this effort.
Sounds like we can reformat this to have a signature lines for 6 people.
I'd love to sign.
Okay, let's do that, and we can have it at the desk, everybody can talk and get a signature on that.
We appreciate greatly your support. We admire all of what you're doing and the good things that are going on, and we believe a lot of good will flow from this, and some bigger things will flow from it.
Are all of you here for the historical commission? All of you here for this issue? Well, that's wonderful. Good.
That is awesome.
Okay,
Love it.
anything else you want to add anything to that discussion, or all the acceptance?
What they said.
And you're welcome to stay for our really exciting resolutions, or you're welcome to go home.
If my dad needs to stay, make sure we're out here by 9.
I second that motion.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You can sleep before we have it.
We don't have to
Second that. Midnight.
Okay, moving along. San Juan County District Facility, San Juan County School District. So you mentioned in here that it is almost unchanged. They're happy with the work.
Yeah, so, in the discussion that we had about the wellness center and like, oh, maybe we need to use facilities, we found that the language in here already accommodated for that. So we just needed to, basically, we just made the change that they would meet once a quarter to coordinate, and then obviously extend the term of the contract.
So just address our occupancy issue and spread some of the like volleyball or whatever. So there's more people time on that one.
Yeah,
As far as
we'll take that as it comes, because I received similar reciprocal type comments. So I think I just want to be fair.
But I will say that those baseball fields, at the high school are keeping much better than they have in a long time.
And rain.
Well, there is that.
Yeah. So, yes, that's something that we'll be.
I know, I didn't get that close.
And I think, Tyrell with the school district and taking on this new position, he's been great to work with.
So you did this with Tyrone Lori.
Nothing really changed on it other than the dates, right?
The dates and that they'll meet once a quarter as opposed to once a year.
I like that because it keeps that connection more active and engaged.
I think that may have been part of the problem historically is the engagement.
Everybody's sleeping on it, and so we don't stay right in touch. So that's it. We have
So-
a motion on that.
Yeah, we are responsible for the fields that are ours.
Yeah,
Correct.
everybody's responsible for their own.
So the fact that we're to provide a plain area does not create a safety hazard or make living district uncomfortable is our issue that we need to take care of on our fields. And they're supposed to do the same on their fields.
Correct.
Per this agreement.
I mean, if there's like a legitimate liability. So it's not just some opinion of what could be shown.
So there's a legitimate liability.
I'm not speaking to the church or anything specific, I'm just saying, in general, it's talking about evidence of a liability.
It says that a plain area that does not create a safety hazard or make safety or uncomfortable. So that could be a lot of things. I'm just saying that. But I thought we had discussed that we didn't feel like the agreement was necessarily equitable. Maybe they should take on some more, or are we not going to address that at this time?
I think maybe we were thinking that because we haven't been using their facilities.
Right.
Right, and that's what I was saying. when we did.
And they're going to need to, until we can figure out who's at the level session.
Because the only thing we used was we used the middle school, I guess, for soccer. Or have we stopped? No, we've been using this, yeah. So we were only using their old baseball fields.
And we had Little League football.
Yeah, football.
So that's kind of what I was getting at, is we found that it wasn't that the contract wasn't equitable, the way it was written, the contract very much is, just the implementation of it was not being implemented in that.
You said, shit, this way, we're kind of wanting to.
Right.
It's already.
I'll make a motion that we approve the San Juan County School District Facilities Agreement.
Second. Clerk, all in favor?
I,
Everybody, and then opposed? Okay.
Is it a conflict of interest that we both work for the school district?
It is good to probably state that.
No, that's good. That's good. I think you can speak to it in a rational manner.
Actually, there's more.
I
This
think
is two
it's been-
spouses work.
I think it's been evidence that we can speak to it in a rational manner. So we're good.
And you're, yeah.
So spouse.
So we all, yeah.
spouse.
I think when you get to a place like this, you just.
We'll just state that the body of the city council all have some form of conflict of interest in this contract.
Oh, there's that too, yeah.
I have no conflict, I have no vote.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever, your son works there too.
Oh, that's right.
Doesn't count.
I've forgotten that.
It has clearly been made known on public record.
For the record, in small towns, you will always find something.
Connected.
Space and off, yeah, he's up there. Okay. Moving to the next resolution, amending the personality procedures manual for the Blanding City to set policy for elected officials, retirement policy for voting staff. That's elected and appointed. Right?
Yes.
Okay, because the one we're specifically concerned with is appointed.
Yes,
So do you want to outline that, or have people read that and we know what we're looking
that
at?
makes sense.
Okay, any questions for Tim on that?
Is, I mean, this is all good with attorney wise and things like that.
It's a code.
It's private knowledge. Good job.
Yeah.
Okay, I accept the motion on that.
Resolution 914/2021-1, resolution amending the personnel policies, procedures, and for Blanding City to set the policy for elected officials.
Okay,
I'll just comment that I don't like that the state tells us what we have to do. I don't like it at all, but
the position of the state is that they want the local, they
When
want
it's
the
our
municipalities
input.
to be fully empowered unless they don't.
right.
That's
Unless
fine.
it's something else, you should.
Yeah.
You must
Okay,
That is
so
stay out of our business.
so we do have the motion, all in favor?
I,
Okay, any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, which one do we have next? Oh, they're telling us we have to adopt the fees that we have. I guess that's just so that, we have to think it over.
Right.
So this is a year.
Yeah, it is now legislation passed so that,
So rather than saying nothing's changed, it's good, we have to actually adopt it even if it hasn't changed.
right, to show.
So it's a transparency. That's great. I get that. Are there any other questions on what that's pertaining to? Yeah,
It's just found during the audit that this is a change this year. They just want us to pass those fees every year. So-
Has anything changed on this? 'Cause I mean, we've discussed this
It has.
previously about, I mean, the things that I can think of that we've talked about are like the connection.
I would couch this more, this is our due diligence to our residents.
And that's what I like about it. I like that this is in the packet online, all together. These are the fees that we charge for different services in
So
Valley City. That's
You'll
awesome.
see this come around again in May. We're trying to pass it, we need to pass it before the beginning of the next fiscal
Okay.
year. So we'll try to do that in May when we do the
I
frost.
think it's not a bad idea, so that you put fresh eyes on it.
Yes.
There's been situations where we look back and go, that hasn't changed for 20 years, it's so far out of whack.
Right.
And this would prevent that.
How hard would it be to see something, this might just be really hard to tell me, how hard would it be to see some kind of report with how many, like where we are with these, like, this is where we collected this? See, like, are we good, do we need to raise them, do we need to lower them, like, oh.
That's the other part to this, that when we get to the audit next year, they want us to come up with how did we justify coming to this? Okay, and so that's something that we talked about working on
Well, that's
before
a great
May.
question. Go ahead.
And then we'll go ahead and show, when we do that, in May, we can actually show what the total is in that account and kind of how we are justifying what we're charging.
And that was
Yeah.
also part of the legislation, is not only approving the fees, but showing some sort of justification. So
We're
that
not
it's
just
not.
picking a number out of the sky.
Exactly.
So it's a great question, and it speaks to the issue that Robert Olga brought up as a candidate for council. Where do they come from?
Uh-huh.
Do you just pick a number that feels right? And sometimes honestly, that's kind of the best you've got. And so it's gonna be good to try to look at how can you actually say, this fee is this much because,
Or
and
sometimes,
have a rationale.
or sometimes there was a justification when it was put in place, but through time,
Does it still exist? Is it twice as much?
or maybe we've just lost why what that justification was, over time. But yes, maybe the justification no longer exists, and so I think it's very beneficial for our
No,
residents.
I like it. It gets it out on the table where every year the citizens can see what we're up to and question us on it if they so choose.
I was gonna try to show you an example of one that we've talked about before.
There's a lot of work that went into the connection fees.
We talked about, the late fee and the time of, I mean, is that really what we should be charging for the time it takes to process those late notices and all that kind of stuff would be something that we would look at with that is $15 to kind of justify.
I know we did a ton of work on the connection and stuff, and I remember lots of conversation about that.
So we'll be looking at some of these and see if we. need to do
Return
an
check fee is
adjustment.
actually very little low based upon
Yeah,
what other
sorry.
people charge.
He told us not to, that you couldn't say, well, that's what Monticello charges.
Oh, really?
So we're gonna charge that he wanted us to look at us and see what do we really feel like that should be.
You basically what the bank charges.
Yeah.
And the amount of time.
On that, I can tell you that on that return check, the bank does charge us 15, so when we charge it back to the customer, we actually charge them 30, but our portion is only 15.
Oh, I see.
So we're not losing. Okay, correct.
Now, he wasn't saying that we couldn't do comparables with other cities, he was just saying that can't be your only
Yeah,
justification.
correct, sorry. Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution 9/14/2021-2, adopting the scheduled fees for services provided and regularly charged as specified by city clerk.
I'll second it.
I won't repeat it. But that's Perkins and Bowers, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. And moving on, amendment to the sale of Cullinan water outside city limits. So the nutshell here is, we're not changing anything, but we're adding the ability to sell to a separate bona fide, qualified, recognized, licensed public utility, which is very common. Utilities buy and sell wholesale water
sewer, probably all of it.
Do we currently do this with power?
Power functions a little bit differently, but kind of,
But I mean,
yes.
essentially, like we're
Yeah.
buying and.
Right, UAMPS, right, we're part of UAMPS, and technically UAMPS is like selling to NTUA through our system. But right now, as far as water is concerned, the code is completely silent of the sale from public utility only just residential and commercial, and so this would allow us public utility. The distinctions here, as discussed with the city attorney, is that, another public utility wants to connect to ours would have to bring water rights, new water rights, or new water resources that would help us utilize our rights. And they would have to provide the funding to cover infrastructure to bring it to them. And it's at the discretion of the city council whether the water rights or water resource being brought to the table is sufficient based on what staff recommendations. And so in the end, it brings something to say, basically it puts the onus on the developer. And this is very common in most cities, whether it's commercial, residential, or public utilities, is it puts the onus on whoever wants to come to the city or receive service from the city.
Give an example from this.
So for example, well, it's pretty common up north where you have like maybe a city that wants to sell to one of the water districts where they have a regional water district up there. Here, the situation obviously is, there's NTUA, that we could sell water to. But right now, because the code is silent, there's nothing that says yay or nay, whether or not we can sell water to NTUA. And if we did, how does it work? This is just establishing how it works. So if any other public utilities were to approach us, that we would approach it in the same fair manner. And that's what this is establishing. And that's why it's kind of broad.
What's the definition of a public utility? Because, you know, you have a conglomerate of people that live just outside of city limits that get together and create a public utility because they want water.
Well, I'll address that a little bit, because theoretically, I would say yes. I don't know whether they could, I don't know whether they could qualify in all the regulations to become a public utility. Assuming that they could, then they would receive exactly the same treatment as any other.
I mean, it'd be a ton of work. I just did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, but that's the
technically-
first question that comes up, and we should ask, we need to know the answer to this question.
technically, public utilities are some form of governmental or quasi-governmental utility. So not necessarily, well, it could be actually.
But again, you put the onus of getting connected to our system on them. So you can have someone that's 10 or 15 miles away asking, I mean, they could come ask, but they would have to figure out how to run 15 miles worth of pipe.
Exactly.
And bring the water with them.
And that's how it currently stands with the commercial and the residential. If they're unable to annex in, because the requirement is if they're able to annex in, they have to annex in if they're going to connect to our system. But if they're 10 miles away as a resident and want to connect to our city, well, they could if they paid for the cost associated with doing that. So this is just mirroring what those other two sections are already doing. So, and
The
you'll
number 4 is the addition.
Mhm.
to this.
And you'll see that that the resolution says it's repealing the prior resolution. And the reason why that is we have a city ordinance that allows us to do outside city sales. And then we pass an original resolution and policy, and an amended resolution and policy. And so the clean way to do it is repeal the prior two and have one resolution that says it all. So we only have to refer to two documents, the ordinance and the policy. Just makes it simpler, and so things don't get missed.
So is there anything, do you have any comment on this from the planning angle as far as, how this works?
I read through this stuff, and I just, and maybe Dave can address this, I don't know, but is there some other statute or requirement that talks about, priority of the water, you know, they've got to bring water, but say their water right or whatever they bring to the table isn't as good as they originally documented, or it has a bad year, and do we still have to provide the water, or do we have the right to say, your water right that you're bringing or giving to us is not functioning at the level it should?
So that would be handled in the actual agreement. So this allows you to go into an agreement with the base, the base outline of what you can do. Yeah, exactly.
Agreement is, what are we doing with this entity in this case?
Right, exactly, because it might vary from one entity to another, what you want that agreement to look like, but for the most part, this allows you to do it and then determine those exact things you did.
Satisfies your.
Well, if it's going to be outlined in that other agreement specifically, I think the systems of planning deserve the first priority for water from our system over any other group.
And
And I'm not saying that in a preferential manner, but they've been paying for it now for over 100 years, so.
And that's why in this, if you look in section 4, that new section, it says the city shall determine if the proposed additional water rights or additional water resources to the city's current water rights will sufficiently contribute to the capacity of the system to justify the sale of water. That's why that was put in there. So basically, it's
Agreement would strengthen that to the point that says if
So this
proves
is
to not use what was estimated.
right.
And the demand
And
is greater,
ours can do.
there has to be a combination in the agreement for that.
Right, exactly.
Hopefully, we'll find some boilerplate stuff out there where people have dealt with these complex issues. We really don't want to invent the wheel right now.
When we talk about the city, are we talking like, is that approved by us? Is that approved by Terry? Is that approved by you? Like, who are we talking about when it says the city shall work?
Probably a combination of all of them.
Well, it would, city shall determine. If the council wants. Let me see what it says. So it refers to the city in all the prior stuff. So this, I mean, it would, in my understanding, it would need to come to the city council. I wish our city attorney was here to answer that question.
Well, if you're
Needs to
dealing with
define
water,
the city.
legal water stuff, you're gonna want an attorney, maybe even a specialized attorney to be looking at those contracts. And you're definitely gonna want a recommendation from your professional staff.
Right. Either way, a contract, an agreement like this would have to come before the city council. It's not something that I, as the city manager or the city attorney, could just do on our own. I think that's why we put. the
Well, I
city-
mean, this is in here and it says the city all through it. So I mean, I would assume.
I think that's clearly the city council, unless the city council passed a resolution that granted authority to negotiate this water agreement to our engineer.
Right.
And we can even grant the authority to negotiate that, so you can bring it back to us for approval. But I don't think you can give away, the city is the 6 people sitting here at any given time that we see.
Right, especially in, probably hundreds of $1,000s or multi-million-dollar projects. Staff couldn't do that with policy constraints anyways. So that's true.
A little beyond the spending policy, we even less.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, this is all very big stuff. These are just kind of monumental things.
And the idea of creating this was that it would create precedence of how we want this to function moving forward, no matter who we're approached by. Which is why the commercial and residential was set up that way too. But Mike discussed the public utility side of it was never addressed. So.
Sometimes we like to mull things over. Can we do that with us? I mean, I get why we're trying to do it, and I understand what's driving.
I think
this
that's up to
right
the
now.
body of the council. So.
But, with something as serious as water,
So the question
I
is,
don't know.
is time of the essence is
Yes.
what the question is. Can we stamp on it for a couple?
So
and that's not because I'm saying that I'm opposed to it,
It's a big deal.
So based on what we're, on the projects that we're working on with the state, trying to fund the deep well, thank you. Trying to fund the deep well and trying to get preliminary engineering in place and those sorts of things in place. This does have a time ness attached to it. And I can assure you, I mean, our city attorney reviewed it through and through.
Is the timeliness demanding today, or is it 2 weeks gonna make a difference?
It will make a difference in the sense that the other pieces that we're trying to put into place.
And can they roll forward? Can they roll forward their own track? We want to contemplate, maybe there are some rules.
I've got to think about that for a sec because.
So for me, sorry to cut you off, for me, this is, we're not approving anything specific at this point, this is just saying that we can approve something.
I just
like
want
that.
some safeguards in here that protect the water rights
Yeah, I get that.
of the citizens.
And that's exactly what the city attorney and I discussed. That we can't enter into any kind of agreement until we have this. And so this is broad, but it provides safeguards.
You're
And I,
not gonna do anything without this
No.
board.
Well, we can, yeah, I mean, this
So
comes
like
up and
overcomplicate
says,
things,
city.
is that what you're saying?
well, I should say,
I don't think so at all. No, I don't
I
think
think
so.
you're asking the right
Water's the
questions.
lifeblood of this community, and you need to be careful with it.
I think you're asking the right questions and I don't know, it's like I said, it's up to the body of the council, but I can assure you that the city and attorney and I mulled this over for quite a bit. Talked through it, the idea about the water rights, how they have to bring forth the water rights, the water resources, about it's up, the city shall determine if it's sufficient enough. That actually came from input from staff. Brought that to my attention that maybe we should mention that. And so, I mean, it really has gone through the ringer in a lot of ways. So I'm confident in it. Our city attorney is confident in it.
I'm good with it if this safeguards the water, and as it comes to this board.
Because I would want any contracts
Yeah.
to potentially spell out that, the water resource does go to Blanding city residents first.
Mhm.
Like that's always at the top.
And that's why it says if said public utilities provide additional water rights or water resources to the city's current water rights.
So if you look at it in that regard, it could be a positive thing for the city. If we're forcing public utilities to add additional water to our residents, then that's, which is the goal with this, the long-term goal, I think, then it could be very positive for the residents too.
But we just have to be careful about not doing, last in, first out, like you read stuff, you know? Like that, because you're the most recent to hook up, you get the good stuff. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You get the newest, you get preferential treatment over, you know, the historic.
Yeah,
If it'll push any water in my direction and get my water pressure up, then.
See, I go, yeah, the point of this
Number
is,
6.
the way this language is written, it with intent, is that this does not commit the council to anything. This opens the door for the council to have a discussion of what they're willing to commit.
And it's safe to determine if they want, or the granting agencies to determine if they want to give us funding for deep wells that could support other public utilities as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, where the public utility gets that money, same with residential or commercial. A commercial developer comes, the money's probably not coming out of his pocket. He's probably got 10 different investors. Same thing could be here, where they may have granting opportunities that provide the funding to cover the cost of the infrastructure.
And comment.
Just a couple of things that might help the council a little bit. is So the state has passed a law, once the city acquires a water right, we cannot sell it. We can lease it, but we cannot sell it. But we could over obligate it or something like that. And that's kind of what Gabe was talking. You gotta be careful that you don't over obligate it.
And I think we've done a good job, but we have to keep doing it. Like, we can't say, well, we've done good enough.
Right, we always
Water
have to be
for everyone,
vigilant,
like-
for real.
But yeah, I think to maybe assure you is that this, like I said, this does not commit the city to anything. opens the door for the city to be able to have discussions, what they're willing to commit to.
Well, I guess the safeguarding thing as far as making sure people understand this is that we have to determine whether the additional right or resource actually meets or exceeds the demand that somebody wants to put on, and then you're not even halfway there.
Right.
The problem we have in this case is that everything hinges on how much water comes out of the deep well, and we don't know that, and we won't know that for some time. That's where the agreement's gonna get sophisticated, is almost any deep well is gonna produce so much water.
Right.
I don't know how that water production compares to the anticipated use.
Well, so you know, on
So
the,
it has to meet or exceed the anticipated use, and if it punch a dry hole, where are we?
right, so
Which nobody's ever done to the Navajo yet.
Right.
You know,
on that
once you
note,
get to
though,
that formation, there's water.
in my discussions, even though we all know this ties into some of the other discussions that are being had, and it's not this particular discussion item, but it plays into it. As far as that's concerned with the discussions with the Lieutenant Governor's office and NTUA, the state knows this language. I've made them explicitly aware of this language in here, and they're already working with NTUA and the state's Division of Water Rights is working to see with NTUA to determine those water rights on top of the well in case there's something like that. So this may come out in a variety of ways, but only time will tell. But right now, this is the one, I guess, jurisdictional hang up is right now, we can't even move forward in discussing the contract because right now there's nothing in the code that allows us to even have that discussion.
I'm okay with this. I guess I'll make a motion to accept resolution 9/14/21/3, amended policy on culinary water connections to the city culinary water system outside city limits.
And I'll second it.
So Kirk and Bowers on the motion, any further question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we will move carefully forward.
And I refer people back to that discussion we just had when if they just read the headline.
The agreement is where the rubber hits the road.
Exactly.
If we're making an agreement, that's going to be moving.
Yeah, use the residential one, for example, there's a template agreement that's used there. I don't know necessarily that a template agreement would work in this scenario, but it's the same thing. This allows you to enter into an agreement, and that's what's already been our practice with residential and commercial. That allows them to enter into an agreement and then the city council.
So one
It's the same
thing that I've looked at really carefully and just sweat bullets over in this whole discussion is where is the integrity of the city in dealing with people who want to access that resource? As long as everyone gets the same answer, then our integrity is intact. Sometimes the answer is, this is what it would cost you to connect. And they determined that that's not financially viable for them to do that. But that was the developer's choice. We didn't say no. We said, you meet this bar, and we can put you up. One individual resident, if he chose to spend $1 million to connect, they could do it. Might not be wise financially, but they could. And we hook them up. Subdivision wants to spend enough money to connect, we hook them up. They gotta bring the water, they gotta pay for the developer. And so our response in every case is the same. So our integrity, I believe, is intact. Every possible user gets the same answer. If this is the bar, this is the requirement for your particular category of water connection, residential, commercial, or utility. If you meet the bar, we'll start negotiating the agreement. So
And that's the intent of this. One point of clarity though, is this whole policy is regarding culinary water, not raw water. So
Okay, what do we got next?
That's it. That's all she wrote.
No closed session?
You finished your packet?
Oh, actually, I do have one item for closed session. Sorry, but it should be brief. It should be brief. It should be brief.
45 minutes.
Okay, well, in that case, what is pertaining to personnel, legal, real estate? Okay,
I make a motion that we leave open session, and go into closed session.
One second.
Bowers.